more pediatric, and the second night's going to be a little bit more. But anybody who's interested, well, maybe we'll send it out there. You can always
Okay.
ask Lenny. He'll be happy to tell you how to get there.
All righty.
Hi, Len.
That sounds amazing. I want to participate too.
Sure, no problem, no problem. If you're smart, you'll go to the pediatric one.
Yeah, right.
way more fun.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to everybody. Greetings and peace to all of you. I'm Jim Poinsett, Executive Director of the Interfaith Partnership of Greater St. Louis, and welcome to Thursdays Together, a new program of Interfaith Partnership. Wherever you are and from whatever platform that you are accessing us today, we are so glad that you made space in your day to join with us in a time of reflection. You know, last spring, as the pandemic was starting, in response to the pandemic, we at Interfaith Partnership put together a series of interfaith prayer circles. During a time of such new uncertainty, many found these to be a source of connection and caring and comforting and spiritually nourishing. And honestly, way back when we started these things, I could not have imagined that we would still be dealing with pandemic life, the masking and the distancing and the working and worshiping remotely. We've spent a spring, a summer, a fall, and a winter, and now we're on the cusp of another spring, and it seems like we're beginning all of this over again. Though there is some hope on the horizon that a vaccine will provide some relief sooner rather than later, there are still constant reminders of how serious this pandemic and this virus really are and the loss that it brings. Last week, we just passed the 500,000 death mark in this country. And that's a number that is just so overwhelming. It's really hard to put names and faces to it. And it seems like something that's just not even real. But those were, you know, parents and brothers and sisters and family members. And there are so many other losses that we count as we think about the ways that our lives have changed during this pandemic. And nearly a year later, we continue to struggle with the weight of grief and loneliness and injustice and strife. It really seems that to me that the only way that we have been able to keep it together is by learning how to live these lonely lives together. And that's the reason that we created this program, Thursdays Together. The idea is together and to have local religious leaders, whether they're clergy or lay leaders in their communities, share experiences, insight, and wisdom with the wider interfaith community as we reflect and grieve and process all of this with one another. We hope that by invoking our connectedness across a variety of religious traditions, that we can deepen our connection to the divine. We can provide strength and support to one another and hopefully learn to love each other a little bit more and find new paths forward through these ongoing challenges. So today we're going to spend some time in conversation and reflection with each one of our guests who you see on the screen. Feel free, if you're watching on Zoom, to make comments in the chat. And if you're watching on Facebook, in the comment section, and Aaron is with us and we'll be able to read those and relay those as well. And at the end, we will open it up for a time for you to share with what you've heard and what has resonated with you and maybe some of your experiences as we've gone through this last year together. After each speaker, we will, each conversation will have a little moment to take for what we call a process pause that will allow you just some time in your own space to reflect and meditate on what you've heard. And so today I am so pleased to welcome our conversation partners. First, from the Islamic Foundation of Greater St. Louis, Mufti Asif Umar. Mufti, glad to have you with us today. And also like to welcome Rabbi Carnie Shalom Rose from Congregation B'nai Amoona with you, Rabbi. And I'd like to also so happy to welcome Maryl Walters, who's a teacher with the Church of Christ Scientists and works with the congregation in Brentwood. Maryl, great to have you with us today as well. Mufti, let me begin with you. Tell me, what has you were with us one of our original prayer circles. So you're old hand a year later. What's your life about these days? How's your life been?
Yeah, well, well, thanks, Jim, for that introduction, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Yeah, I mean, you know, what's happened in the past year is something that, as we said last year, I don't think this is something that any of us expected would happen in our lifetimes. You know, I, for one, I never thought that the mosque, for example, would be completely shut down while we're so used to praying 5 times a day in congregation at the mosque. You know, I never thought our Friday prayer services would shut down. I never thought the world would come to a shutdown because of something which is so microscopic, like a virus. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. And I think the past year, it's been challenging. It's been unique because we have all had to adjust our lifestyles. We've had to adjust our schedules. We've had to adjust the way we preach, the way we teach, the way we just go about life in general. But at the same time, I think it's a lesson learned from our side. It's a blessing. And I think the blessing that has come to us is that we realize, you know, I, for one, truly realize the power of God the Almighty and the ability of His to really show us something, again, as microscopic as a virus that you cannot even see, has the capability of shutting down the entire world. It shows the power of God and His might and His grandeur. And I think that really opened up our eyes. So it gives us the ability to really be thankful for the blessings that we have been given, those blessings that we have taken for granted before the pandemic. Pre-pandemic, there may have been so many things that we had in our lives before that we still have now even, but those things that we had taken away from us, for example, just being in company, being together, basic things like that. And now we see that these things have been taken away and we're not able to be together as we were in the same capacity as before. So it's really an opportunity for us to be grateful and thankful to God for the blessings which He has given us.
Well, that's quite a spiritual discipline to maintain a spirit of gratitude with so much going on around. And I'm really interested in you as a leader for the mosque there and leading a congregation in this time. And you talked a little bit about having to change focus on the practices themselves. You know, not being able to pray in community, for instance. And I'm really also interested in how your teaching may have changed during this time, as when you know, some might have even began to felt God was absent in this time, and you know, it's time that we should be thankful and all that, but and we recognize the almighty power of God, however we might choose to name that. But how has your teaching evolved during this time to either remind people of that or help them see it differently?
Yeah, well, I think you know, any time you're going through a test or a difficulty, we have to preach the concept of patience and gratitude. In Islam, both of these concepts are great. You know, God, He mentions in the Quran that He tests us in different ways. For example, one verse that is in chapter 2 in the Quran, God says He tests us. وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ. So He tests us through fear, وَالْجُوعِ, through hunger, وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ, which means that if anyone has lost their wealth or lost their money, wal anfus, in yourselves, if you've experienced those who are close to you or any loved one who has passed away, for example, wathamarat, and in your crops, which basically means that those people who spent so much time irrigating their fields and planting their crops, and all of a sudden a drought came and destroyed everything, then what happens? They go through a difficult time and a test. But وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ, God ends that verse by saying that glad tidings will be to those who show patience, who exercise patience, who exercise sabr. And it reminds me of a saying of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, which says that wondrous is the affair of those who have belief, as there is good for them in every matter. And it is not true for anyone except those who have belief. And what he said was, if he is pleased, then he shows gratitude. Meaning if he goes through prosperity, then they show gratitude and thanks towards God. And that is good for him, because God loves those who show gratitude towards him. And if he is harmed, or if he goes through difficulty, then he shows patience. He exercises patience, and there is good for him in that as well, because God also loves those who show patience. So a lot of preaching has to do with just understanding and realizing that this life is such that it's full of peaks and it's full of valleys. And right now we may have, for this past year, it may have been one of those valleys, but the only way to go is to go back up. And as we said, there's a lot of hope that is there on the horizon. And, you know, the good thing is, God is not absent. Just because you can't attend the mosque or you can't attend your place of worship, it doesn't mean that God is absent. We believe in God as being Al-Alim. He is the all-knowing. He is Al-Basir. He is all-seeing. All of his qualities are there, and God is always there. So one has the ability to call upon God wherever they are and whatever they are doing.
You know, when you were with us during the prayer circles back in the spring, you talked about the lesson that came from Umar, I believe, who was the second caliph, and it said that don't go to the land where there is danger, and the second part of that was essentially don't put others in danger, right? And so as this wore on, the pandemic wore on, and we all got antsy in our own homes and from being isolated. How was it that you were able to sustain that versus people's just innate desire to be connected with one and be together, as the restrictions sort of loosened, but not really? And how did you balance that teaching with all that, or how did that teaching evolve during all that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think when it comes to teaching, we have to thank God for the blessing of technology. There's positivity in technology and there's negativity in technology. At the very least, we were able to connect virtually through Zoom and through Facebook and through YouTube and all these means that we have. So even though you're not in the same gathering physically, you're still together virtually and you can still see the other. And I always, it's never the same, but it's at least better than not having any alternative that's out there. But you know, we've constantly preached the aspect of being safe and sound and being sure that one is not an inconvenience to the other. So our mosque, for example, we've always preached the aspect of even now when we have our prayer services, there's masks, social distancing, all of that. It's very important that we keep each other healthy, we keep each other sound, that we are there for each other, we give each other the best advices. You know, and in a time like this, it's vital for us to make sure that we follow these things so that we are able to get out of the situation that we're in, and so that we can move forward. But you know, for me personally, you know, having a wonderful family to spend a little more time with than I had before, especially during those times when we were shut down, I think it's a great blessing. Some people may think, oh, it's not a blessing, you know, I can't, but it's an opportunity to bond more with your family, to bond more with your children. And, you know, I personally have 3 small children, so having more time to spend with them on a daily basis was a blessing that I thought, you know, was something that I should take advantage of. So I'm sure a lot of people who are with us, our audience that's here with us, they can, instead of complaining and saying, why is this going on? Why is this happening? I'm sure they can all point out to several blessings that have come out from this pandemic so that they can move forward on a positive note.
Well, absolutely. And I know that you need to be on your way to late afternoon prayers. So is there a parting word or reflection or blessing that you would like to share with the people listening in today?
Yeah, so I just I think I guess the main thing is maybe to end with a prayer. I guess I will do that. That's better to end with a reflection, and then I'll say Amin at the end so we know when the prayer is done. O God, O Master, you are eternal life and everlasting peace by your essence and attributes. The everlasting peace is from you and it returns to you. O our sustainer, grant us the life of true peace and usher us into the abode of peace. O glorious and bounteous one, you are blessed and sublime. We thank you for the blessings that you have bestowed upon us, and we ask you to give us the ability to use the blessings that are at our disposal for good, for positivity, to benefit all of humankind. Amen.
Amen. Wondrous are the affairs of those who believe. Mufti, thank you so much for helping us sustain our belief in these ongoing times throughout this whole year, but especially today. So grateful for your presence, and peace be with you as you go on to lead your prayers this late afternoon.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Take care.
Thank you. Our next conversation partner is Rabbi Carnie Shalom Rose, who's a rabbi at B'nai Amoona. Rabbi Rose, welcome, and happy Purim today, right? So it begins here in a couple of hours. So how's your life been this year, and how do you get ready for what is supposed to be such a joyous festive celebration in the midst of a lot of sorrow and loss?
Thank you for the invitation, and what a great blessing to be with all of you. I want to thank the Mufti. Maybe he'll get a chance to watch the recording, but I found his words very inspiring and moving, and I'm going to take away a great sense of equanimity, knowing that we're all praying and going through many of the same experiences. I want to begin actually with the words of the Psalms 133. In some collections, it's 132. Hine matovu manaim shevet achim gam yachad. How good and pleasant it is for brothers and sisters to be together. And then it adds gam yachad, in unity. So this is a group of people who are unified for one common goal, and that's to make our world a better place. So this has been an unbelievably challenging time. I would say that the hardest part for me, I think we work hard all the time, clergy folk, that people, at least in my community, have forgotten that there's a difference between day and night. I used to start receiving calls before morning prayers. The morning prayers here are at 7 a.m. and then would maybe get a call or two in the evening. Evening prayers are at 6:15. We only pray 3 times a day, so the Mufti has it a little harder than we have it. But now people call it any time of the day or night, and they've sort of forgotten that there is a kind of a difference between day and night. So that's a little bit challenging, and so we're more present than we've ever been before. I would also say that the challenge has been creativity. Not only the technological creativity, but how to get our messages across. Lenny will tell you as he's on the call here that our cantor is unbelievable, and she's really a minister of spiritual music and has done remarkable programs to bring that music even over Zoom into people's homes, and to continue to provide what I think is a really emotional and spiritual sustenance at the most difficult of time, right? It's not bread and water that people are looking for. It's the spirit of the Lord that they're seeking, and she's been able to bring it, and we've been able to bring it. And when I use the term bring it, I mean like the kids say it today, like we've been able to
Yeah,
bring
right.
it.
Bring it. Bring
we
it.
are we are teaching 18 discrete classes a week, in addition to all of the worship, and including all of the counseling, and all, that's an awful lot for one institution to carry. So I think we've never worked harder, but on the one hand, we're exhausted. On the other hand, we're invigorated because worship services are up by 400%. Classes are up
Wow.
by 500%, right? So there's an engagement. Maybe people have time, maybe people have an inclination, or maybe people are seeking community and speaking God's presence. And so that's been wonderful. So that's sustained me. I'll say one other thing, and then I'll go on to the next question. But I want to mention that generally speaking, we spiritual type folks work in a modality of what I call, or it's not really me, but we call man in search of God, or human in search of God, right? It's the human who's questing for the divine. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel taught that it's actually God who is in search of man, in search of humanity. And I would say that that flips this whole conversation because it reminds us that even in these moments when you mentioned the eclipsing of God, this Buberian notion, right? Martin Buber's idea of the eclipse of God, that God is somehow obfuscated, that's only because we're not doing our job, right? We have
Mm.
to bring godliness into the world. And so during this period of time, what sustained me is that we actually started our own food pantry in our synagogue. We've served
Wow.
well over 200 families in a month or 5 weeks. That sustains us, that we're still doing our holy work. We have a mission field even when we're not in the mission field, right? We have responsibilities and obligations that we can fulfill even if we're limited by this pandemic that's swirling about us. So really it's shift our emphasis away from us searching for God and knowing that God is in need of us. Without us, God will not appear in the world. And so it redoubles our energy and our efforts to make the world a place in which God can reside, right? To bring heaven down to earth. And I think that's been very affirming for me, energizing for me, and for our community as well.
I want to, yeah, take me through your Purim celebration that's going to happen beginning in a few hours, and just what and this is like, I know this is, I'm owning my Christianity in this, and this is, it may not translate as well as it should, but what is the proper what's the proper level of joy one can experience during a pandemic?
So first, let me just say the following. Since the Mufti mentioned that God tests us in many different ways, I'm actually in the middle of a long fast. Uh, so if I'm incoherent, it's only because I haven't eaten. But yes, God does test us. So Purim actually begins today with the fast of Esther. If you remember the
Okay.
story, Esther fasted for 3 days before she went to the king. So there is a notion of purification that happens, and in many ways, we're often tested, particularly those of us who are gastronomically oriented. We're tested in the fasting. I think it's one of the most important disciplines that many of us have taken upon ourselves in our spiritual lives of fasting, and of course, setting aside for those who are in need. But for us, the holiday is joyous. And in fact, in many ways, it's the most frivolous of the holidays. We
Mm.
have a term, ad deloyada. You should get so, I think, often people get it confused, intoxicated. I don't think they mean only with wine, okay? They mean they should be so intoxicated with the notion of the way in which the world operates, which is mysterious by the name Esther, right? The scroll of Esther. Esther actually means the hidden one, the hidden one,
Mm.
the hidden one. So there's so much that's hidden. And so we have this notion of joy, so we don't know the difference. And on some level, that's a wonderful remedy for a time of pandemic. In other words, we're so joyous that for at least a moment in time, we can set aside the fact that we're not gathering in our synagogues. We're not gathering in our places of worship. We're not in community the way we would like to be in community. And for a moment, we can set it aside and close our eyes and imagine that there will be a better day. And actually, the great line, the only line of the scroll of Esther that makes it into our prayer service is La Yehudim Haita Ora V'Simcha V'Sason Vikar. For the people living at that time in Shushan, there was light and joy and happiness and celebration. We're going to get back there, ladies and gentlemen, and we're going to say those words. But it's the only line that actually come from that scroll
It's
that makes it
amazing.
into our worship
Yeah.
every single. By the way, we say it on Saturday night, right? When we make the distinction between the Sabbath, which is a taste of the world to come, and we return on Saturday night to the regular world. So we know we have to have joy and celebration. We will move out of this darkness to light.
Well, from your lips to God's ears, hopefully it's sooner rather than later. Is there one? So you mentioned fasting, and Mufti mentioned spirit of gratitude. And so, is there one maybe discipline from your tradition or even your own life that you can share with people that they might give a try here in these next weeks and months that's still ahead to help center them during this time?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. I want to say that the Jews are the people of eternal optimism,
Mm-hmm.
right? It is no coincidence that the national anthem of the state of Israel is Hatikvah, which means the hope. And we have lots of reasons where we could spend most of our lives in what we call in Yiddish ochenve, like kvetching, like complaining about how bad things are. We could have an absolutely lachrymose history. And that's one way to tell the history of the Jewish people. But we don't. We continue to hold out hope. So I want to say that we've been training for about 4,000 years for this moment in time. It's not the only trial that we've had, but
Sure.
we know what it means to be living in times of great darkness and to still hold out hope. So if there's any practice that I would suggest is that you have the practice of hope, to believe that there is a plan, that there is a judge and there is judgment, right? And that the Almighty has a plan for all of us. And if we could just sort of discover a little bit what that plan is. And if you're wondering what your plan is in the meantime, until you figure it out, give alms, give charity, clothe the naked, feed the hungry, help as many people as you possibly can till you figure it out. By the way, in the doing, you will figure it out. So eternal optimism and eternal hope. I hope that's what you'll hold on to as we move through this period of time. I'm with you, Jim, that I am looking forward to that ray of sunshine that will ultimately come, and it may come speedily in our day.
Well, that may have been that is truly blessed words to hear. Is there a final blessing or prayer that you would like to share with us before you're on your way to your joyous celebration this evening?
I started with the Psalm, so why don't I finish with the Psalms? Psalm
Sure.
90, verse 17, for those of you who would like to look it up. It says, "May the favor of the Lord our God be upon us. Let the work of our hands prosper. Oh, prosper the work of our hands." And I'll just sing it a little bit in Hebrew. Vihi noam Adonai Eloheinu Aleyenu Umase Yadeyenu Konen Aleyenu Umase Yadeyenu Konereyehu.
Keep a spirit of joy and optimism and hope alive during this time. Rabbi, thank you for your words and your presence here with us today, and happy Purim, and look forward to hopefully sometime the not too distant future celebrating with you in person.
Amen. Thank you all. God bless you all. Shalom.
Shalom. Our next conversation partner is Maryl Walters, who is a teacher with the Church of Christ Scientists. Maryl, how are you today? welcome. Thank you for being with us. How's this year been for you?
Thank you. Well, first of all, how wonderful and inspiring this has been already. Oh, my year's been really interesting. I would say I've done a lot of praying for myself and my family and my church, my community, my country. I've just gained in the faith in the power of prayer to lift our thought, to internalize what Jesus taught, that the kingdom of heaven is here, it's now, it's within us, it's among us. And even if we don't feel like we're seeing it, we need to look deeper to find it. And so it's challenging to do that, but I feel like I've been exercising my spiritual muscles, and I feel stronger because of it.
And your particular role in your community, how has it been to lead during this time?
Well, I don't know that I have led so much. I do have students that I teach, but our church is very, there's a great equality in it. So we have, we all have our parts and we all share. Our Sunday service, for instance, we have readers who are who volunteer to do this. And so we're always sharing and learning from each other. And that's been, that's continued on. We've had, for instance, Sunday service. We have a regular Sunday service, although it's of course on Zoom. And then afterwards, our particular church, although there are a number of churches, Christian Science churches around here, have been having moments of just conversation and sharing, so that we support each other and learn from each other. You know, when you're in person, you talk to maybe a few people in the foyer, but one of the advantages of Zoom is that we open it up like you did at the beginning, where we could see everybody who was on the Zoom call today, and we talk with each other and share and support each other, bring up issues that are challenging, and teach each other, support each other. So that's been a real blessing that has been as a result of being on Zoom. Mm-hmm. For me, another thing is, for years, I was on a speakers bureau for the Christian Science Church, traveling all over the country and even all over the world. And so I am loving staying put. I really am. But I've had a lot of connections with colleagues around the country that have been very rewarding. I'm active on the interfaith relations table of the National Council of Churches, and we hold dialogues. And so the dialogues have continued, even though they're on Zoom now rather than in person. So Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Christian, Sikh, Buddhist, Hindu, Christian dialogues have been going on. So I've spent a lot of time on my computer and haven't been mentally isolated, even when physically isolated.
Yeah, so I was, you were talking a little bit earlier about your congregation still getting together and doing the readings and sharing conversation over Zoom, even though not in person. Has there been a reading or a sacred text or story that has particularly resonated with you during this year, that has helped sustain you or your congregation through it?
I think it has to do with love. Love your neighbor. Love God. Love your neighbor as yourself. And so everything that we see or do around is an aspect of love. How can we love more? How can we understand our neighbor better? How can we support them better? And you know, for me, prayer is just a huge aspect for all of us. And learning to love like Jesus did has been, I think, central for me. And then, you know, besides prayer, our particular church has a practice that we've been doing for a long time. We call them blessing bags, and they're plastic kind of gallon-sized bags that we put food in, and food that's wrapped and lasts, and Band-Aids, masks, soap, those types of things. And we carry them in our car. And if we see somebody who is unhoused or needs support, we've got something to give. So that's one of the small ways that we've been able, our particular church has been able to practice the Matthew 25
Sure.
requirement to love others, to visit in the way we can right now, and to support people all over the community.
So I know that in your tradition that prayer is central, particularly when it comes to issues around healing. And so how have those prayers been shaped with so much illness and hardship around? How have those prayers been shaped over the last year?
That's a really good question. And I can't kind of speak in the royal we, because I think each of us individually has found a way to see how we can look at the community through the eyes of love. We have that conviction of God is love, as the Bible states, love itself, not a big man up in the sky passing judgment. And so in rejoicing, in knowing that the divine love God is omnipresent and is companioning with everyone, that no one is outside of God's care, that divine love supplies all the human needs. Nothing is impossible to God or beyond God's help. I think that's the prayer that I have, and I think others too have really felt strengthened in. And that God is truth itself, and spirit and life. And these are names for God that are found in the Bible. And they just help me feel closer to God and more able to see God's presence, seeing with the spiritual sense, seeing with God's eyes, the presence of good, of blessings. And, the Rabbi and the Mufti both talked about that sense of the blessings are present, and they can expand and strengthen us in our understanding of the brotherhood of all of us and sisterhood of all of us, and loving God and loving our fellow humans as we need to be doing.
Great. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I'd say what else it keeps me going is the growing recognition that what we're thinking, what we're believing and accepting about our world needs to be defended from all of the negative and evil aspects that are surrounding us, all the challenges. It doesn't mean ignoring them, but facing them with a conviction that love is more powerful than hate, and truth is more powerful than lies, and God's abundant care defeats poverty, that every human being is created in the image of God, and there aren't any exceptions. So that kind of thinking leads to a life worth experiencing. It helps us think more, live more joyously and humbly and generously.
Well, there's yeah, sure, absolutely. Sorry, I didn't mean to step on your final words there.
Oh, go ahead.
But I was just going to affirm that there have been plenty of occasions in which all those things that are of our belief, our shared belief, I think of everybody on this call, needed to be defended in this past year. So you've been at mighty work this past year. Right.
We have, and I love that the Mufti left us with the sense of patience, and the Rabbi left us with a sense of hope and expectation. And I just I would love to leave us with a sense of the power of love. I think that's all part of our traditions. So, as a student of Christian Science, I study the Bible daily, as well as a textbook called Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures by the founder of Christian Science, Mary Baker Eddy. And what I'd love to share is an interpretation of the 23rd Psalm. We're getting into a lot of Psalms here from the Bible. It's a reflection and it's a blessing. And I know our time is coming up, so I will just
Sure.
finish with this. Psalm 23, divine love is my shepherd. I shall not want. Love makes me to lie down in green pastures. Love leads me beside the still waters. Love restores my soul, spiritual sense. Love leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for love is with me. Love's rod and love's staff comfort me. Love prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Love anoints my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house, the consciousness of love forever.
No one is outside of God's love. And thank you for sharing that much needed word with us this day, Maryl. And we've just heard a remarkable set of conversations here, and coming out of that patience, hope, and love. It reminds me of something from Scripture, Christian Scripture, faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. And I'm so happy that we ended with a reflection on love of our little trifecta here of patience, hope, and love. We have a few minutes, and Maryl, if you want to hang out for a second, that would be great to open it up to people. If there's anybody that wants to share some commentary or ask Maryl a question, or Aaron, if you've noticed anything in the chat that you want to share with anybody, feel free. But this is just a time to open it up. If there are any comments that people would like to share, you can just unmute yourself and speak up. We will keep it informal.
Jim, I just wanted to thank you for starting these up again. I think that having this opportunity is wonderful, and we need it right now.
Thanks, Valerie. Glad you were able to be part of it today. And we've my colleague Aaron and colleague Gwyneth have really found these uplifting as well. So we're glad to be able to put those together. If anybody else wants to share anything that's resonated with what they've heard, or if there was something in the chat that Aaron, you think needs to be lifted up, we have another moment or two. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
It's a little bit different, but the question was as to how this has affected you and how are you adapting. One of the things, I belong to the Curia of Ars Catholic Church here in Shrewsbury, and I cantor there once a month. So the question is, what do I do the other Sundays? And I decided months ago to go around the world and attend Sunday Mass in all the Spanish-speaking countries in the world. And I'm only missing Cuba and Equatorial Guinea, which is the only country in Africa that is a Spanish-speaking. So I have 19 and 2 to go. and it offers different perspective, of course, different ways of speaking.
Yeah.
It's the same, the same readings and everything, but it's interesting to hear, because once in a while in the homily, they talked about more specific things to what's happening. So I used to say that I was a Roman Rotarian, the Roman Catholic here, attending masses all over the place. Now I go around the world. So 19 countries, 2 to go. We'll see.
That's incredible, Guillermo. Thank you so much for sharing that, and by blessings on you doing that ministry. That is amazing. Anybody else? Well, thank you all for being a part of this. We will close now. We will have another one of these on March the 25th. So Thursdays together. And we're still putting together our conversation partners for that day. And but as we continue to go through the pandemic and these related challenges, we wish peace be upon all of you, and thank you for being with us, and we will see you in a month from now.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.